Chapter 12. No. Chapter 13. Chapter 13 is long and pretty fucking tedious. So, with that fair warning, we will proceed and hopefully we can get through this together. This is the chapter of masculine with no Dixon. Masculine being something of the anti-Dixon. So there you go. Intent upon picking his way back over the wet rocks to the sea steps, ascending with some care, Mason doesn't notice masculine till he's ashore and nearly upon him. It seems an odd place to find him, unless he's here for the departure of a ship, and upon this tide only Dixon's is bound away. Withal, Mason doubts that he wishes to be seen, his eyes on detecting Mason performing a swift passado. "My early stroll," he greets Mason. "Up most of the night anyway, stargazer's curse. Mr. Dixon and the clock successfully embarked, I trust?" Mason nods, gazing past the little harbour out to sea. None of his business where masculine goes or comes, God let it remain so. The stars wheel in the blackness of the broken steep hills guarding the mouth of the valley. Fog begins to stir against the day swelling near. Among the whitened rock walls of the houses seethes a great whisper of living voice. "Shall we enter again the Atlantic whorehouse, find breakfast and get to work?" At this hour, lanterns through window glass beckon everywhere. "It certainly isn't Cape Town," Mason marvels. "Sailors a stagger, nymphs going on and off shift, novice company writers too perplexed to sleep. Fishmongers in tandem with giant tunas slung betwixt them considerately as chair riders. Slaves singing in the local patois, torches a twinkle everywhere. And no curfew. John Company, unlike its Dutch counterpart, recognises here the primacy of tide tables, and beyond them of the moon, ceding to her de facto rule over all arrivals and departures, including life and death, upon this broken island so ill-used. They cross the bridge, go along the main parade, the waves ever beating, and past the company castle, pausing at the bottom of the principal street. Though small in secular dimensions, masculine gesturing in the town, yet entering, ye discover its true extent, which proves mazy as an European city, no end of corners yet to be turned. 'Tis loaves and fishes here in James's town, and philosophy has no answer. He appears lucid and sincere. Then Mason, as he reviews it later, should likely not have blurted, "If someone wished to disappear for a while, yet remain upon the island." The bright eyes begin to blink as if in some code. Of course, forever would be easier, because of the sea, that is. Mason isn't sure he wants to know what this means. Of course, but say for a certain night. 'Twould depend who's in pursuit. say, Honourable John? The first 2 or 3 days would be easy, assuming one had a perfect knowledge of the town and the island. For the initial search parties would be of younger writers and apprentices, too new here to know even the castle in its true extension. Disruptive lads, intimidating, alerting every soul to the imminence of a search island-wide. That is, through this entire world. You've certainly thought this out. You were inquiring upon your own behalf, I'd assumed. No need for me to disappear. Oh dear, the royal sock's quite forgotten all about old N.M. Esquire, lounging his life away, waiting at the king's expense for the home planet to move along. But now, at the very instant, there is work to be done at last. The heavens have provided me. Yes, inquires Mason pleasantly enough. A veteran astronomer, with a brilliant success to his credit, to share in my simpler, meaner duties. Mr. Waddington, I collect, being somehow unavailable for the honour? Masculine shrugs. No sooner did the planet detach from the sun's further limb than 'twas D.I.O. for Mr. Waddington. Waddington left, in fact, 3 weeks after the transit. I don't do parallaxes of Sirius. I don't do tides, he muttered as they made their farewells. I don't do satellites of Jupiter. All it says in my contract is 1 transit of Venus, and that's what I did. If you wish me to observe the next, there'll have to be a new contract. Easy passage to you, Robert, replied Masculine equably. Moonlit nights and successful lunars all the way, as he turned toward the town, and the Hawes Quarter again by the little bridge, and the sombre cleft of the valley ascending in back of it all, to go and re-engage with his tasks. This island, Masculine sighs. Not everyone's brochette of curried albacore, is it? Waddington expressed his displeasure upon their Indiaman's first sight of Lot and Lot's wife, and the grim company fort at Sandy Bay. Not a day of his engagement was to pass without the island providing new ways to disappoint him. Too few streets, too many stairs, the coffee seeming to him adulterated with inferior Javas, obviously broken from company cargoes by enterprising pursers. Surely not, Mason alarmed. Be easy, 'twas his fantasy. Afterward, appearing before the Royal Society, he praised St. Helena and its governor very extravagantly and generously, having withal, on the way home, got his lunars beautifully. The captain forgave him the cost of his passage. They came that near, though the weather grew so thick at the end that they were all the way into Portland Bill before anyone saw land, Waddington being heard to let out a heartfelt cry of joy that at least he had lived to see England again. I must try to honour his precedent, Mason supposes, mustn't I? You mean you won't help me with the tidal data either? A couple of sticks to be set in the water? Where's the hardship? I meant, rather, that I must obtain lunars in quantity and of a quality to match. If I weren't intending to help, I should have sailed with Dixon away from this. That is, pray you, there is no comment upon the island so unfavourable that I've not heard already from Waddington, or uttered myself. For a while I firmly believed this place a conscious creature, animated by power drawn from beneath the earth, assembled in secret by the company, entirely theirs, no action, no thought nor dream that had not the company for its author. Ha ha, yes, imagine. Fanciful me. I tried to walk lightly. I did not want it feeling my footsteps. If I trod too hard, I would feel it flinch. So I try not to do that. So might you. All, even the large population here of insane, go about most softly. What authority enforces the practice? Governor Hutchinson? The company troops? I suggest that more than either, 'tis the awareness of living upon a slumbering creature, compared to whose size we figure not quite as lice, that keeps us uniquely attentive to life so precarious, and what civility is truly necessary to carry on. Hence, no curfew. To live, we must be up at all hours, every moment of our waking passed in fear, with the possibility ceaseless of sliding into licentiousness and squalor. Ah, well, now you've brought the topic up. Sir, ye may speak lightly in London of these things, but here we may, only at our peril. You have not seen squalor, sir. Be advised that you now live in the metropolis of that condition. Mason is sweating heavily, thinking, Dixon has left me alone here with a dangerously insane person. And why did Waddington really have to leave so quickly? Hey, fool? Why, 'tis plain as day. His departure had panic written all over it. Obviously one must live in perpetual caution here, never to alarm masculine. Mason begins by trying to slow down his usually convulsive shrugging. I'm but newly come. What are they saying, hey? That I should have left with Waddington? How? Why are you caressing your hat so forcefully? Obs of Sirius must be taken as far apart as possible, mustn't they? At least 6 months of what the world no doubt sees as idleness, whilst the planet, in its good time, cranketh about from one side of its orbit to the other, the baseline creeping ever longer, the longer being the better. How is any of that my fault? Is he expecting an answer? They have passed through the level part of the town and begun to climb. You think me neglectful, masculine with an unsettled frown. You can tell me freely how I seem to you. Alone in this place, how am I to know anything, even of how I look? Wore my wig for a while, but everyone gave it such queer stares. There's not a looking-glass of any useful size upon the island, too luxurious to merit the lading. No one here knows how he appears to anyone else, save for some maidens down by the bridge who are said to possess rouge boxes with miniature mirrors set inside the covers that allow them to view their features, though one at a time. All that is not thus in fragments is invisible, and if my character as well be experiencing some like morphosis, some veering into error, how am I to know? Perhaps you are sent upon this anti-Etesian wind unbearable as correction, to act as my moral regulator. How we've all longed for one of those, eh? With any number of ways to respond to this, Mason chooses silence, which he hopes will not be taken as unsociable, and they climb on. As the island's only harbour out of the wind, James's town knows slumber but fleetingly. Sailors speak of it before and after coming ashore as a place visited in an opium dream. Music every time a door or shutter comes open, torches trailing scarves of flame ever rising, chuck farthing players in the alleyway, ornamental lanterns scarcely bigger than the flames they hold, dangling from the wrists of young ladies with business at this hour. All the rage in town just now, Masculine assures Mason. These girls flock to the Indiamen as much for the shopping as for the sailors, taking up one novelty upon the next, discarding each as lightly as they choose another, a mixed lot, as you see, African, Malay, the odd Irish rose. Ooh, Reverend, who's your attractive friend? Now, Bridget, yes, a lovely day to you, waving amiably. Not that one ever lacks for wholesome activities here. One can picnic up the valley, visit Sandy Bay, improve one's mind, study vortices, learn Chinese, drink. He pretends now to reel in astonishment before an entry in a wall more brick than lime, above which swings a sign depicting a white luminary with the face of a woman of the town, multiply patched to indicate behaviour she might, upon acquaintance, prove to be a good sport about. Aha! Amazing! Why, here again's the moon. Care to pop in? Inside, a chorus of pleasant-looking young women begin to sing. Well, sailor, ahoy! Put down that harpoon, you're a fortunate boy, for you've beached on the moon, and we moon maidens hope we shall know ye quite soon. 'Tis the end of our rope. We need men in the moon. Ah, men in the moon, a miraculous boon. Midnight and noon, we need men in the moon. What but Masculine's local? Usual Sir Cloudsley, Gov, and the Madeira for your friend, Mr. Mason. Excellent. Mr. Dixon fortunately embarked, I trust. Once again a pleasure. Mason squints. The landlord, Mr. Blackner, is that extremity of quidnunc, which, given enough time, necessarily emerges upon a small island surrounded by ocean for thousands of soulless leagues in every direction, where the village-sized population have only one another to talk about, and anyone newly arrived is feasted upon with an eagerness matched only in certain rivers of South America. Everyone comes to know what everyone else knows, and the strange mind-to-mind throb may be felt distinctly, not to mention apprehensively, by the newcomer. As soon as Mr. Blackner, by way of this remarkable intelligence-gathering mirror, discovered Masculine's connection to Clive and the East India Company, he began announcing the news to visitors, some of them no more than common seamen, with a jerk of the thumb in Masculine's direction. That's Clive of India's brother-in-law over there, right by the crock of gin. Out in the wind a bit too long again, Mr. B. My oath! The celebrated Super Nabob, his brother-in-law, right before your eyes. And he has two brothers, and Clive of India's their brother-in-law too. Sometimes actually bringing over to Masculine the wary, pint-clutching visitor. Here, Neville, my lad, who's your brother-in-law? Go ahead, tell him. Annoying himself each time, Masculine, reluctant to fuss, wishing only to have it over with, replies, Aye, 'tis Lord Clive. But Clive of India? the shrewd visitor will wish to make sure. That very hero, sir, has the great good fortune to be married to my sister. Ah, yes, yes, their host far too avid. That, of course, would be Miss Peggy. For this sort of thing he has received nearly audible glares. 'Tis a finely poised arrangement here at the Moon. In return for suffering the familiarities of a celebrity-mad nitwit, Masculine is allowed to run up a tab, already legendary even in a hard-drinking port like this, that might finance a small war. Chargeable to the Royal Society, of course, and beyond them, should they demur above a sum Mr. Blackner is not certain of, which will disagreeably prove to be but 5 shillings per day, to the wealthy without limit Clive of India. Masculine may also feel the weight of family tradition. His brother Edmund, known as Mun, 10 years before, on his way out to the Carnatic as a young company writer, having also visited the Moon and not cared for it much, suggesting it might, however, be just young Neville's sort of place. Masculine is still trying to work out what that might be. Later, up at the upper observatory upon Ulleram Ridge, Mason tries to have a look at the plumb line suspension without appearing too blatant about it. Masculine having grown ever more fretful, not to mention resentful. On the day of the transit, Mason and Dixon had obtained times for all 4 contacts, internal and external, of Venus and the Sun, whilst here at St. Helena, just at the crucial moment of first contact, a cloud had appeared and made directly for the Sun. How Masculine's heart must have sunk. He had been warned not to place his observatory too low, had known of Dr. Halley's difficulties with the early fog that often filled the ravine. Upon hearing of Masculine's ill fortune, Mason understands that his task will be never to appear pleased in front of him, nor for that matter to respond to any of his stiletto flourishes, which will prove to be frequent. Of course, not all are chosen for the Cape. You lads had the pearl of the lot, damn if you didn't. Masculine's voice, in such times of stress, edges toward a throat-based soprano. 'Twas the only port we could make in time. If Mason repeats it once in this St. Hellenian sojourn, he does so 1,000 times, suggesting an average of 10 times per day. Damn if you're not simply blessed, aye, and blessed as well. I've a curacy. You may trust me in that article. As for the rest of us, why, what matter that all curricula are brought in the ill-starred instant each to the same ignominious halt, poor boobies as we be? Yet there I go, repining at what really was too much too quickly. Not only the weather you do appreciate, for even had the seeing been perfect that day, there'd yet have been the damned sector. Do forgive me, 'tis the matter of the plumb line, falsum in unum principle. How can I trust anything I may see through it now? Especially here. Somewhere else it might not have mattered as much, but it's disturbing here, Mason, don't you think? Aren't you feeling, I don't know, disturbed? Disturbed? Why no, Masculine. After the Cape I find it quite calming here, in a tropical way, pure air, coffee beyond compare, from bush to oast unmediated, the sky remarkably productive of obs, What more could a man ask? What more? Slapping himself smartly upon each cheek as if to restrain an outburst. Of course, I am being far too nice. I, and no doubt namby-pambical as well. Ha, ha, ha. After all, what's being confined upon the summit of a living volcano whose history includes violent explosion, eh? Which might indeed reawaken at any moment, with naught to escape to in that lively event, but thousands of leagues of ocean, empty in every direction. Ark, Mason, can you not feel it? This place, this great ruin, haunted, an obstinate spectre, an ancient crime. None here will ever escape it. 'Tis in the gases they breathe, generation unto generation. Ah, 'tis it. There, look ye. Pointing beyond the circle of lanthorn light, his features clenched uncomfortably. The first time Maskelyne carried on thus, Mason became very alarmed. He already suspects that the island enjoys a dispensation not perhaps as relentlessly Newtonian as southern England's, and as to whose author's identity one may grow confused, so ubiquitous here are signs of the infernal. Howbeit, after some number of these seizures, Mason no longer feels quite so obliged to react. It is thus with some surprise and a keen rectal pang that his leisurely gaze now does detect something out there, and quite large too, that should not be a patch of nothing, where but the other moment shone a safe wedge of stars encyclopedically named. This observatory, Maskelyne, the company's provided you some sort of, that is, armoury. Ha! A set of French duelling pieces, with the flints unreliable. Take your pick, does it matter? Against what approaches shot is without effect. The visitant, by now more than shadow, has crept toward the zenith, engrossing more and more of the field of stars, till at length, rolling overhead and down toward the horizon. Weather! Mason almost disappointed. With that, rain begins to fall, dense and steaming, sending him cursing outside to make secure the sliding roof, whilst Maskelyne occupies himself inside with a fresh pipe, snug as Punch in his booth. Mason feels less resentful than resigned, preferring anyway the certain uproar of elements he knows to the spookish fug of Maskelyne's sermons upon the unknown. Soon the rainfall is spouting from all three corners of his hat at once, regardless of what angle he places his head at. Later, obless, reluctant to sleep, they open another bottle of mountain. Outside this ephemeral hut, anything may wait. Mountains sharp and steep as the heights of hell. The next planet, yet without a name. So, in the moon, have they been solemnly assured. A little travelling stage troupe. Is St. Helena really all performance? A plantation sent out years since by its metropolitan planet, which will remain invisible for years indeterminate before revealing itself and acquiring a name. This place till then serving as an aide-memoire, a representation of home. Many here, descendants of the first settlers, would never visit the home planet, although some claim to have been there and back, and more than once. What if 'twere so, declares Maskelyne. Every people have a story of how they were created. If one were heretical enough, which I certainly am not, one might begin to entertain some notion of the garden in Genesis as an instance of extraterrestrial plantation. Masculine is the pure type of one who would transcend the earth, making him, for Mason, a walking cautionary tale. For years now, after midnight culminations, has he himself lain and listened to the sky temptress, whispering, "Forget the boys. Forget your loyalties to your dead, first of all to Rebecca. For they are but distractions, temporal, flesh, ever attempting to drag the Uranian devotee back down out of his realm of pure mathesis, of that which abides. For if each star is little more a mathematical point, located upon the hemisphere of heaven by right ascension and declination, then all the stars, taken together, though innumerable, must, like any other set of points, in turn represent some single gigantic equation to the mind of God, as straightforward as, say, the equation of a sphere, to us unreadable, incalculable, a lonely, uncompensated, perhaps even impossible task. Yet some of us must ever be seeking, I suppose. Those of us with the time for it, suggests Mason. One cloudless afternoon they stand in the scent of an orange grove. As tourists elsewhere might stand and gape at some mighty cataract or chasm, nose gaping rather at a manifold of odour neither Englishman has ever encountered before. They have been searching for it all the long declining day. It is the last orange grove upon the island, a souvenir of a paradise decrepit. Shadows of clouds dapple the green hillsides. Houses with red tile roofs preside over small valleys, the pasture lying soft as sheep, all with the volcanic meadow where the two stand, circled by the hellish cusps of peaks unnatural, frozen in mid-thrust, jagged at every scale. Okay, I think this is masculine talking. If I'm wrong, we've got it around the whole conversation around the wrong way. Saint Brendan set out in the 5th century to discover an island he believed was the paradise of the scriptures, and found it. Some believed it Madeira. Columbus was told by some at Madeira that they had seen it in the west. Philosophers of our own day say they have proved it but a mirage. So will the reign of reason charily dispose of any allegations of paradise. Yet suppose this was the island. He came back, did he not? He died, the very old bishop of the monastery he founded at Clonfert, as far from the western sea as he might. This side of Shannon, perhaps that was paradise. Else why leave? A riddle, wondrous, just the ticket. Why, ere 'tis solved, we may be back in England and done with this. The serpent being the obvious answer. What serpent? The one dwelling within the volcano, Mason. Surely you are not ignorant upon the topic? Regretfully, sir. Serpent, worm, or dragon, 'tis all the same to it, for it speaketh no tongue but its own. It rules this island, whose ancient curse and secret name is disobedience. In thoughtless greed, within a few pitiably brief generations, have these people devastated a garden in which once anything might grow. Their muck heaps everywhere, disease, madness. One day, not far distant, with the last leaf of the old father never die bush destroyed, whilst the unremitting wind carries off the last soil from the last barren meadow, with naught but other humans, the only life remaining then to the island, how will they take their own last step? How disobey themselves into oblivion? Simply die one by one, alone and suspicious, as is the style of the place, till all are done? Or will they rather choose to murder one another for the joy to be had in that? How soon is this that we're talking about? Pray we may be gone by then. We have our own ways of disobedience, unless, I presume, expressed in the motto of Jacob Bernoulli II, Invito Patria Sidero Verso, against my father's wishes I study the stars. Mason pauses to squint and shake his head free of annoyance. How do you know anything of my father's wishes? Do you mean that because he is only a miller and a baker, he would naturally oppose stargazing out of perverse and wilful ignorance? I mean only that in our times 'tis not a rare dispute, Masculine assures him, reason or any vocation to it, the pursuit of the sciences. These are the hope of the young, the new music their families cannot follow, occasionally not even listen to. I know well the struggle, mine being with Mun especially, though Peggy as well would rag me. They cozened me once into casting her horoscope, with particular reference to the likelihood of her being married any time soon. 'Twas but a moment's work to contrive the wheel of a maiden's dreams. Jupiter smiling upon Venus in the house of partnerships, Mars exactly at mid-heaven, Mercury with smooth sailing ahead, not a retrograde body in sight. Was I thanked? Rather, one simple horror, and 'twas Neville the astrologer thenceforward. Not as insulting as stargazer, anyway. And what if I did cast a natal chart or two whilst at Westminster, and of course later at Cambridge, when I found I could get sixpence? Well, I suppose you've lost respect for me now, this being their second week up on the ridge, with confessions apt to flow like the water that cometh down out of the country, noted in ancient maps of this place. You got sixpence? I never did better than 3, and that was with all the Arabian parts thrown in as inducement. Oh, don't I remember those lens, brother? 'Tis our burden. Kepler said that astrology is astronomy's wanton little sister, who goes out and sells herself that astronomy may keep her virtue. Surely we have all done the Covent Garden turn. As to the older sister, how many steps may she herself indeed already have taken into compromise? For, be the instrument brazen or be it fleshen, Masculine sings in a competent tenor, stargazing's ever a whore's profession, isn't it? Some in a palace all marble and brick, some behind hedges for less than a kick. Tell me, what's it matter? The stars will say, we've been gazing back at ye many a day, and there's nothing we haven't seen more than one way to sing derry o day. Now, some go to Bath where like candle and moth, even men of the cloth seek them out, whilst others run pitches where diggers of ditches may scatter their riches about. though the tools of their trade may be differently made, for their art they are paid all the same. 'Pon astronomer's couch or coquettes all avouch to the reckless debauch of a game. There are stars yet to see, there are planets hiding, peepers are we with a lust abiding. Some style it Providence, others say God, some call it even and some call it odd. Yes, but what's it matter? The stars will say, we've been gazing back at you many a day, and there's nothing we haven't seen more than one way. Sing dearie oh day. We've a while before Sirius, Mason, masculine, flushed with song. What say I do yours now, and you do mine later? What? Mason begins to edge toward the tent opening. Your natal chart, Mason. Have you ever had it done? Well, it's all right, neither have I. Perhaps most lens folk would rather not know. But as we're old charlatans together, marooned here in this otherworldly place, and withal sharing the same ruling planet, rather goddess, to whose least sigh we must attend, or risk more than we ought, eh? Mason blinks. Is it the altitude? Hardly to get into a kick-up with Clive of India's brother-in-law, he supposes. Hey, what if this isn't insanity, and no worse than the frantic chumminess of exile? Yet suppose, more harshly, that 'tis Bradley whom masculine wishes to snuggle up to. Mason, having run into any number of amateur stargazers with the same ideas about access to the AR. Back home, 'twas possible to wave them adieu till they be absorbed back into the human nebulosity of the town. But here in a tent in the middle of the 360-degree ocean, what choice does he have? Date of birth? Oh, date of birth? Don't know. They had me baptised May Day, and that's the day I mark. So you were born some weeks earlier, perhaps in Aries, even Pisces, less probably in Taurus. Yet he is giving Mason the heavy oh. If it is helpful, I am told that of the qualities observed in my comportment, those of the classic Taurian prevail. Persistent, phlegmatic, provoked only with great difficulty, a passion of titanic scope, a fate ever to be pricked at by small men in spangled costumes. 1st of May then, shall we? So masculine goes to work, by dark lantern light, his face a glimmer and smooth as wax, whilst the sea crashes up to them past the baffling of vertiginous peaks and ravines. He pencils out a wheel and begins to fill it with glyphs and numerals. At one point, as if without thinking, he reaches back and releases his cue, and hair swings forward to either side, curtaining him and his bright eyes with the calculations. Soon he is passing wordless remarks such as and yah. Mason beginning to huff somewhat, feeling like a model to whom an artist is making cryptic suggestions. There, says masculine at last, will you look at those Venus aspects? La la la. Where's that mountain again? You're right after all, I'd rather not know. Sorry to have put ye to all this trouble. First of all, doesn't it seem odd that you and Mr. Dixon, with your natal signs ruled by Venus and the Sun respectively, should have lately, as partners, observed the conjunction of those very two bodies, the event occurring as well in the sign of the twins? Shrugging. Chance of a Sun ruler 1 in 12. Chance of a Venus ruler 2 in 12. Chance of the pair 2 in 144. A coincidence appealing, yet not overwhelming. Yet as odds say upon a race, though it takes Mason a while to recognise it. Maskelyne has been trying to convey the dimensions of his curiosity. As a man of religion, he has often enough sought among the smaller probabilities for proofs of God's recent attendance, has practised epsilonics for the sake of stronger faith, as what deep-dyed Newtonian would not? 1 in 72 or 0.014 is not a figure he can be quite comfortable with. 'Tis not quite miraculous enough. There's the very juice of it. And if not quite a clear intervention by the Creator, not quite from heaven, then what power is this an act of? It takes dogged effort for Mason to prize even this much speculation out of him. Yet what else, after all, is there to do in this miserable place but smoke pipes and discuss God, as newly met guests at some assembly might discuss a common acquaintance but lately withdrawn? Your natal Jupiter lies in Gemini, the very sign in which the late transit occurred, of which you lads made that very fine ob. Traditionally, wealth from collaboration. Yet both Mercury and Venus are in Aries, possibly your natal sign, favouring independence, leadership, and both lie blessedly sextile to your moon in Aquarius, humane, inclined to science, a devotee of reason. Though squared by your sun, of course, he has fallen into a kind of mystical bustling, like a gypsy at the fair. But dear, oh dear, not much sign of Mr. Dixon at all. Nothing closer than your Mars in Virgo, standing 2.5 degrees in from the cusp with Leo, suggesting you make him a truculent and wary neighbour, his shiny-eyed, vixenish fizz peering out of all that loose hair. You take a deep interest in Mr. Dixon. A parsonical spread of hands. Shallow curiosity, sir. The amateur observer's curse. Yet now you've raised it. Have there been others who have taken an interest in him? Who can they be? And what might they expect? Well, it can't be the Honourable EIC, can it? Or you'd know, wouldn't you? As much as you, there being the fitful rumour that your Mr. Peach will be named a director, as well as a long-established truth, Mason later will fear he snapped back, that your Clive may have anything he damned wishes. What of it? Any repayment I may owe Sam Peach is many orders of magnitude beneath the arrangements proper to, pausing to deepen his voice, Clive of India. Mason having found that inflecting the name thus, whilst reliably nettling Maskelyne, also seems strangely to amuse him. We are quite the pair then, that is, I presume, peering at Mason, both subjects of the same invisible power, no? What is it, think ye? Something richer than many a nation, yet with no boundaries, which, though never part of any coalition, yet maintains its own great army and navy, able to pay for the last war as the next, with no more bother than finding the key to a certain iron box, yet which allows the Britannic governance that gave it charter to sink beneath oceanic waves of int in ink incarnadine. Bless us, Mason cries, another riddle. Hold, permit me to guess. Or perhaps, like our tapster, you entertain fancies as to my relations with Lord Clive. Splendid. Out of dark policy do I encourage it in all, as little as object to it. Yet the truth is so drab, Mason. Indeed, since Peggy and he returned, I've been to Berkeley Square but once, not seen them above thrice more, ever in company, certainly not in private. Clive and I do not play whist together, nor in disguise haunt the snares of Ranelagh. He did not bring me back a jewelled telescope, nor am I his connection in London for the purchase of opium. Seldom, if ever, does he upon the least the least movement of my eyebrow rush forward, insisting I take wagon loads of oriental treasure. Being the very least I should have expected. What are brothers-in-law for? Perhaps, wishing any gifts to you to be appropriate, he yet remains unclear as to the range of your interests. He's not yet ready to make use of me, that's all. Some day he must. I've been paid for. It shan't cost him anything. Masculine's fizz, with its one-sided smile and wary eyes and need for complicity, would not have grown this cautious had some blows not already landed. Whatever his bargain, he is not happy with it. Mason, who as yet hasn't seen the terms of his own, is but apprehensive. Here we are, Masculine plaintively, Englishmen in the bloom of sanity, being snatched away one by one, high and low, every day, like some population of distraught Malays waiting for the call of a muck, going along at what we style peace with the day, all at once, bang-o, another and out in the street waving the old crees, being British, of course, more likely a butter knife or something, yet with no place, no link upon the great chain, at all safe, none however exalted. No, and that is why I fear so, dear colleague, for my sister, and for the great soldier whose fate is hers. Peering out now from a burrow of anxiety, dug one long sour mid-watch upon the next. Mason has no way to tell how deliberate this is. Masculine as all London has known about Clive's use of opium, yet what comfort can Mason give him? Such things have ended badly before, whilst Masculine has ever presented an enigma. Long before they met, Mason felt his sidling advent, cloaked as by Thameside leagues of smoke and mists. At last, at first, he saw the introductory letter, as Dr. Bradley in the octagon room brought it fretfully to and fro, muttering, "Damn difficult to make out. Seems to be instructing me in the matter of lunar distances, yet somehow I can't quite. Here, see if you can make sense." Letting go of it, allowing the document to flutter earthward faster than Mason could dive to catch it, and disappearing towards the observer's kitchen. At first, and then upon rereading, he could make no more sense of the letter than Bradley had done. One of Mason's chores as assistant was to review just such correspondence. Since the Longitude Act of 1714, which offered prizes up to £20,000 for a reliable way to find the true longitude at sea, the observatory had become a target for suggestions, schemes, rants, sermons, full-length books, all directed to Bradley's attention upon the problem of the longitude. Though some were cagey, hinting at amazing simplicity and ingenious devising, whilst giving no details. Most of the letters were all-out philosophic confessions, showing either an unhealthy naivete or an inner certainty that the scheme would never work anyway. For many, it was at least a chance to rattle at length to a world that was ignoring them. Others were more passionate as to the worth of their inventions, though employing arts more of the actor projector than of the geometer. Occasionally, insanity rolled a sly eyeball into the picture. Treatises on parageography arrived, with alternative maps of the world superimposed upon the more familiar ones. Many, as had the elder Cabot upon his deathbed, claimed to have been told the secrets of the longitude by God, or, as some preferred, that which ever created earth and her rate of spin. Others told of rapture by creatures not precisely angels nor yet demons, styled agents of altitude. That they were taken aloft and shown the earth as it appeared from the distance of the sun, and that the navigator of the vessel used a kind of micrometer whose lines were clapped to the diameter of the earth, and that the measuring device read 8.75 seconds of arc. Not in our numbers, of course, not until accurately transnumerated from theirs. More than happy to share details of this toilsome conversion upon duly authorized request. Yet, as there now exists no further need for a foreign expedition to obtain the Earth's solar parallax from the transit of Venus, you would oblige me by recalling your own parties and using what influence you can with astronomers of other principalities, as well as among the Jesuits and so forth. A retired naval officer wrote from Hampshire of the great asymmetric principle he had discovered. An invisible grain built into creation, whereby 'tis less work to rip than to cross-cut, to multiply than to divide, to take the derivative than the integral, and, coming to my point, to obtain the latitude than the longitude. For the one, we need only know the sun's elevation at noon. Yet from the difficulty of finding the other, enterprises have foundered, fleets have perished. Treasure unreckonable lies beneath the indifferent sea. The solution is simple enough, though lengthier. I have practised its elements from various quarter-decks in all conditions, from close reef to becalmed. My zero meridian, not upon Greenwich nor Paris, but a certain Himalayan observatory in Tibet. The book of tables I consult being reduced from observations made there by the celebrated Dr. Zhang, then, as now, in exile. These are not lunars nor yet Galileans, but based upon the very slow progress of what is undoubtedly a planet, though no one else claims to have seen it. Neamu Gymnorum. Bradley asked Mason to read that part aloud, twice. Aye, the star I do recall, lying upon the zodiacal path, a pebble, a clod, just in front of Castor's left foot, perhaps eternally about to be kicked. If Bradley, who was never mistaken, was not mistaken. Hence Propus, though Flamsteed, paronomastically disposed, called it Tropos because it marked the turning point of the summer solstice. Although, Mason attentively footnoting, that point presently lies somewhat to the east. Well, you know just about where we mean then, Charles. I do seem to recollect now, well within the field, aye, some kind of a blur, a greenish blue. Perhaps I noted it down. Welcome to have a look, on your own time, of course. Make sure you fix it with your lady. They don't like it when you're up all night, at night, you know, prowling about. Believe in their hearts that men are werewolves. Have you noticed? Never mind, you never heard a thing. And before the echo had quite gone, in came Susanna. the lightest of dove-grey fans beneath her eyes. As if knowing her destiny, Mason thought, ashamed as he did at how it sounded, helpless before the great, cruel, unspoken, the astronomer's desire for a son, and her fear that she might find in their next attempt her own dissolution. Yes, he had entertained such vile conjectures, as who would not? He had also imagined her lounging about all day, scoffing sweets, shooing admirers out different doorways whilst admitting others, answering spousal importunities through doors that remained shut, issuing Bradley ultimata and extravagant requisitions, chocolates, a coach and six to go to her matua makers, a full season's residence at Bath, a commission abroad for an admirer grown inconvenient. Not all predators are narrow set of eye. In town, some of the more ruthless beauties have gone far disguised as wide-eyed prey. Such a feral doe was Susanna. If Bradley knew this, 'twas an article of his sentimental service long agreed to. The absence of further children after Miss Bradley was a secret text denied to Mason. He seethed with it, a beast in lean times, prowling for signs, turned by any scent however contradictory, or to a beast unbeastly. She was back in Chalford. Had she ever slept with Bradley again? Did she have Bradley on her name, but Mason on her mind? Did she dream of Mason now as he had once dreamt of her? Was that oinking upon the rooftops? Their trajectories never, Mason thought with dismay, even to cross, though he'd have settled for that, one passionate hour, one only, then estrangement eternal. So crazed had he been after Susanna Peach. I was only 16 upon your wedding day. I stood outside the churchyard and cried. And now I'm working for the man who carried you away, and every day I see you by his side. Sometimes you're smiling, sometimes you ain't. Most times you never look my way. I'm still as a mill pond, I'm patient as a saint, wondering if there's things you'd like to say. Oh, are you daydreaming of me? Do you tuck me in at night? When he's fast asleep beside you, are those fingers doing right? How can love conquer all, when love be so blind, and you've got Bradley on your name and Mason on your mind? When it falls Mason's turn at Maskelyne's natal chart, he grows unaccustomedly cheery, breezing through the computation and filling in the last aspect with a flourish. There's the old horror. Now let us have a look, shall we? Pray you, moon aspects only, spare me the rest. Poh, superstition. Your moon is in Taurus, and making a grand trine with Mars and Venus. Wish ye joy of that, I'm sure. No squares, mercy, a snort. Your fortune's little pet. Abnormal number of trines and sextiles as well, in every combination. Yet another promise of good luck. Jupiter and Mercury in your birth sign. Mercury's retrograde, but then Mercury's always retrograde, eh? The foul datum, cries Maskelyne. I slip down streets unnamed to the salons of unregistered rhetoric masters, where all struggle to teach me, yet continues at my curse, that the world cannot understand me when I express myself. My letters are ignored, my monographs rejected, Mercury retrograde, tiny fleet trickster, yet counterponderating all these blessings astrological. Excuse me, I'm I'm not actually sure that now 'tis you, even you, Mason. What use are trines and sextiles if human discourse be denied me? Fly on, midge of mischief, thou hast triumphed. Mason understands that he may, if he wishes, see himself through duty at St. Helena by baiting masculine thus, any time he has a velleity to. He also understands how quickly the amusement value of this will fade. Usually, he feels nonetheless impelled to suggest, a messenger going the other way is returning after having delivered his message someplace else. Masculine frowns and begins to consider this. The next day, after smoking a while in silence, perhaps that's it. Explains a good deal, doesn't it? A message that never came to me. How shall I proceed? Waste what scrap of lifespan remains to me, attempting to find out what it was? According to this chart, advises Mason, you'll find out sooner or later. Refrain from struggle. Allow your life to convey it to you when it will. And as in all else, Bob's your uncle. Or in this case, brother-in-law.